All right, let's jump into a deep dive today into a really fascinating book. It completely flips how we often think about getting what we want.
Hmm.
Imagine taking the high-stakes skills used by, FBI hostage negotiators, the ones dealing with life or death situations,
Yeah, intense stuff.
and applying them to your everyday conversations, asking for a raise,
Mm,
negotiating a car price, maybe even getting your kids to bed on time.
right. The book argues that the techniques that worked with, well, terrorists and criminals are surprisingly effective with, well, with all of us normal humans.
Exactly. So our mission right now is to pull out the core principles from this book and see how you can actually use them, to get better outcomes in your own life.
And it all kicks off with this incredible story, really. The author, he was an experienced FBI hostage negotiator,
Right.
already using this very specific kind of psychology-based approach. Then he goes and takes this famous negotiation course at Harvard Law.
The one focused on rational problem solving.
Exactly, all logic and reason. But what he found was his real-world crisis intervention methods actually worked better in practice,
Wow.
even against the Harvard professors in their own role-playing exercises.
That's amazing. It's like his meathead FBI training, as he kind of jokes about it,
Yeah.
that a deeper grasp of how people actually tick than the purely intellectual approach.
It seems so. So the first big takeaway from the book is that effective negotiation isn't just about logic or facts or finding rational common ground. Fundamentally, it's an emotional and psychological game.
Right. It's about the feelings underneath.
Precisely. And the book brings in the science. It mentions researchers like Kahneman and Tversky.
Nobel Prize winners, right, for
Yeah.
behavioral economics.
That's them. They showed how humans are constantly swayed by cognitive bias, these unconscious filters on reality. The book says there are like over 150 identified biases messing with our perception.
Wow, 150. Like the framing effect. How you present something changes the response.
Exactly. Or prospect theory, why we take bigger risks to avoid losing something than we
Wow.
do to gain the same thing.
And loss aversion, that's a big one in the book. We hate losing more than we like winning.
Definitely. We're wired that way. And this all ties into our two ways of thinking. System one, fast, emotional, intuitive, unconscious.
Gut feelings.
Right. And system two, slow, logical, deliberate. The book argues that traditional negotiation models, like the famous getting to yes,
The classic.
a classic, absolutely valuable for things like BDNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. But the book says if you ignore the emotional system one stuff, it's like trying to make an omelet without knowing how to crack an egg.
Huh. Good analogy. So getting to yes gives you the strategy, but not the tools for the messy human part.
Pretty much. It highlights that gap.
Okay, so let's unpack the book's approach then. Where do we start with managing that emotional side?
The absolute core, the centerpiece, is tactical empathy.
Tactical empathy.
It's not about agreeing with the other person, necessarily. It's about actively listening to really understand their perspective, their emotions. The book calls listening a martial art.
Listening as a martial art. I like that. It's active, not passive.
Exactly. It's balancing that emotional intelligence with subtle influence, really trying to get inside their head.
So it's a deliberate skill, not just being nice.
Very deliberate. And there's psychology behind it. Research shows that when people feel genuinely heard,
Uh-huh.
they become less defensive. They're more willing to listen to you, and they actually evaluate their own thoughts more calmly. It kind of paves the way for rational discussion.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we do it? What are the actual techniques for tactical empathy?
All right, the book breaks it down into some really practical skills. First up, your voice.
The late night FM DJ voice. That one stuck with me. Calm, slow, downward inflection.
That's the one. Forget that assertive, direct tone we often think we need. This calm, cool voice isn't weak, it's actually strategic.
How so?
The book says it literally uses your voice to flip emotional switches, moving someone from maybe distrusting to trusting or nervous to calm.
Like in that bank robbery example from the book,
Right.
where switching the voice just changed everything.
Instantly changed the dynamic, yeah. It's powerful.
Okay, so voice is key. What's next?
Mirroring. Sounds almost ridiculously simple.
Which is
You just repeat the last 1 to 3 critical words the other person said.
just repeat them word for word. Doesn't that feel awkward or like mocking?
It can feel a bit strange when you first try it, yeah. But the book explains it taps into something called isopraxism.
ISO what?
Isopraxism. It's basically a neurobehavior we humans unconsciously imitate each other to build comfort and connection. Mirroring triggers that.
Huh. So it builds rapport without them even realizing why.
Exactly. Like that bank robbery story again with Chris Watts. The author mirrored him, and Watts just started spilling information. Vomiting information, as the book puts it.
Wow. And there was that workplace example too, right? Mirroring two copies.
Yeah, and anywhere. And the boss just suddenly rethought the whole thing and offered a digital alternative. It makes the other person clarify or reword their own point without you having to say, "What do you mean?" Which can sound confrontational.
Okay, mirror the last few words. Got it.
Yeah.
And then silence. The book mentions silence after mirroring.
Yes. Crucial. After a mirror, or the next technique we'll talk about, just pause. Let it sink in.
Let the technique work.
Exactly. That silence creates a little vacuum, and people feel compelled to fill it, so they keep talking and you keep learning.
Which leads nicely into labeling.
Yeah.
This is where you actively call out the emotion you're seeing.
Right, using phrases like, "it seems like," "it sounds like," or "it looks like."
Yeah.
You're identifying their emotion or their situation as you perceive it.
And this is powerful because
Well, the book cites neuroscience, like Matthew Lieberman's work. It shows that putting a label on an emotion actually shifts brain activity.
from where to where?
From the fear center, the amygdala, to the more rational, thinking parts of the brain. It literally dials down the intensity of the emotion.
So saying, it seems like you're feeling really angry about this, doesn't just acknowledge it, it actively helps them calm down.
That's the idea. It helps them process it more rationally. It's huge for diffusing negative situations. Think about that Harlem standoff example in the book.
Oh yeah, that was intense.
Negotiators talking through a door for 6 hours, just labeling the fugitive's fears. It looks like you don't want to come out. It seems like you worry we'll come in with guns blazing. It looks like you don't want to go back to jail.
Just acknowledging those unspoken fears helped.
Over time, it lowered the temperature. And labeling isn't just for negative emotions, right?
No, not at all. You can use it to reinforce positive ones too. Or even preemptively, like that funny story where the author called an FBI official he shouldn't have.
And started with, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned."
Exactly. Labeled the awkwardness and disarmed it right away.
Or the example of the student dealing with that reluctant donor.
Right. I'm sensing some hesitation with these projects.
Just a simple observation, not an accusation. And it opened the door for the donor to admit his real hang-up, not wanting to seem like a soft touch. Labeling gets to the core emotion driving things. Acknowledge it, and you can start resolving the issue.
Okay, this next one feels bold. The accusation audit. You list the worst things they might be thinking about you before they say them.
Yeah, it feels totally backwards, right? Like inviting criticism.
Definitely.
But the book argues that getting those negatives out in the open yourself makes them seem less threatening. It kind of deflates them, takes the sting out.
So going into a tough meeting, I might start with, look, you probably think I'm unprepared for this. Maybe this idea is half-baked.
Exactly. You air the potential criticisms first. And the book says sometimes the other person will actually jump in and defend you. No, it's not that bad.
Really?
It happens. Like Anne and Mark listing all the negatives ABC might throw at them before the meeting. It reportedly changed the whole dynamic, reduced the hostility.
Wow. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The book really challenges how we view the word no. We usually dread hearing it.
We do. We see it as failure, the end of the road.
But the book says no is gold.
Pure gold for a negotiator, yeah.
Mm.
It argues no is often just the start. It frequently means wait, or I'm not comfortable yet, or you haven't convinced me.
It gives the other person control, makes them feel safe.
Exactly. It's a safe choice. It clarifies what they don't want, which is crucial information. And it helps define boundaries. The author even tells that story about getting his FBI job, partly because he didn't just accept the initial no.
Right. And pushing for yes, too hard, too early, that just makes people defensive.
Totally. Think about annoying sales calls.
Ugh.
They try to trap you into a yes. It feels manipulative. That's why the book suggests using no-oriented questions instead.
Like, instead of, do you have a few minutes? Ask.
Is now a bad time to talk?
So if they say, yes, it is a bad time, you arrange a better time. If they say, no, it's not, then
Then you have their undivided attention. You win either way. It respects their autonomy.
clever. Very clever. But the book also mentions a time when not getting a no is a red flag. The no means no-go idea.
Right. If you've used these techniques, tried to make it safe for them to say no, and they still won't, They might be indecisive, confused, maybe even dishonest. They might not be able to deliver.
So you might need to consider walking away then.
You might. And speaking of getting a no, what about that email magic? The one-liner.
Oh yeah, have you given up on this project? Just that.
Just that. It's designed to trigger their loss aversion. Nobody wants you to think they've given up or dropped the ball.
But they'll jump to say no.
Exactly. No, of course not. I've just been busy. And boom, they're re-engaged and they have to explain their position. Plus, it subtly hints you might be about to walk away, which motivates them to respond.
That's a sneaky good one. Okay, validation. This seemed really important in the book. The difference between hearing "you're right" and "that's right."
Oh, absolutely critical. Game-changing difference.
So, "you're right" sounds good, but it's bad.
Often, yes. The book argues it's frequently just lip service. They're saying, okay, I hear you, maybe to make you go away.
Oh.
They agree intellectually, perhaps, but they don't own it.
They haven't internalized it.
Right. So their behavior probably won't change. It can actually shut down the conversation because they think they've satisfied you.
Like the author's son, the football player, always saying "you're right" about avoiding blockers.
But kept running right into them. He heard it, but it didn't stick. "You're right" often signals the end of influence.
Okay, so what we hear is, "that's right."
That's the gold standard. "That's right" means that they feel you've truly deeply understood their perspective, their worldview, their feelings, their needs. It's a breakthrough moment.
The moment they feel completely heard.
Exactly. That's when real connection happens.
So how do you get there? How do you elicit the "that's right"?
Primarily through using summaries and paraphrasing effectively. You need to re-articulate their position, their feelings, their problems back to them in your own words.
Showing you didn't just hear, you understood.
Precisely. You captured the essence of what they're saying and feeling. The book gives that sales example where summarizing the doctor situation got the "that's right" and opened the door.
And that amazing story about the Korean student negotiating with his ex-boss for a new job.
Yes. He kept summarizing what the boss was hinting at. So it sounds like you could approve this if I was in headquarters helping you communicate better.
The boss kept saying "that's right" until the real motive came out, needing an ally for his own promotion.
That's right. Unlocked the whole thing. The book connects this to the idea of unconditional positive regard from psychology, when someone feels truly understood and affirmed without judgment.
Their defensiveness drops.
And their own innate urge for constructive behavior increases.
Yeah.
That's when genuine change, mental and behavioral, becomes possible.
Okay, so we've built understanding, maybe gotten to "that's right." How do we now guide the conversation towards our goals without being pushy? The book talks about the illusion of control.
Right, using calibrated questions. This is where you get your counterpart to do the work for you.
Make them think it's their idea.
Essentially, yes. You want them to feel like they're in control, figuring things out, but you're subtly shaping the path they take. Calibrated questions are the tool.
And these are open-ended questions.
Yes, usually starting with what or how. They're designed to make the other person think and respond within a framework you've set. Like, what is the biggest challenge you face here? Or how can we solve this problem?
Not leading questions, but guiding questions.
Exactly. And crucially, the book warns against using why.
Right, because "why" sounds accusatory.
Almost always, in any language, apparently. Why did you do that? Puts people immediately on the defensive. You might use it very strategically if you want them to defend their position. Like, why would you ever change from the system that seems to work for you? But generally, avoid it.
Okay. And a really potent, calibrated question the book highlights is, how am I supposed to do that?
Yes. It's such a gentle way to say no, or that doesn't work for me.
It pushes back without being confrontational.
And it makes them think about your constraints and potentially suggest a solution that accommodates you. Like the example of using it to get paid by a difficult client.
The Ecuador kidnapping story really drives this home. The wife, Julie, negotiating for her husband.
She didn't argue, she didn't demand. She just relentlessly, calmly asked what and how questions.
And it confused the kidnapper.
Confused him, slowed everything down, gave him the illusion of control because he was the one talking and problem solving. But it kept him from getting angry and ultimately drove the ransom way down.
And these questions can also help uncover those hidden stakeholders, the behind-the-table people who can block a deal later.
Definitely. Asking, how does this affect the rest of your team? Or what hurdles do we need to clear internally for this? Can bring those potential deal killers to light.
So you're framing the conversation, But they feel like they're driving.
That's the illusion of control. Very powerful.
Okay, but eventually you often have to get down to the numbers, the haggling, the brass tacks.
Yep. The book doesn't shy away from that as part of the process. The author's story about buying that red 4Runner.
Where he really wanted that specific truck.
Yeah, his own desire created leverage for the seller initially. The key was how he started the haggle, that gentle rattle.
And using that technique again.
Yeah.
Saying no without actually saying the word no.
Right. His line, "Wow, your offer is very generous. I really wish I could do that. I really do. This is so embarrassing. I simply can't."
It sounds so deferential, but it's firm.
Completely firm. And then, crucially, silence. Let that hang there. The pressure builds on them.
Then the book outlines the Ackerman system for the actual bargaining process, the FBI's method.
Yeah, apparently their most effective process for setting and making offers. It's quite structured.
How does it work?
You start with an extreme anchor, really low, maybe 65% of what you actually hope to achieve.
Okay, that's designed to shock them, reset their expectations.
Exactly. Might even trigger a bit of fight or flight, narrows their thinking. Then you make calculated, increasing offers, but with decreasing increments.
So you jump up to maybe 85% of your target, then 95%, then finally 100%.
Something like that. The decreasing jump signal, you're getting close to your absolute limit.
And in between your offers.
You use those calibrated questions again. How can I do that? What flexibility do you have? You wait for them to make counteroffers. You want them bidding against themselves.
Right. And the final piece is using non-round numbers.
Yes, this is brilliant. Offers say $18,743 instead of $19,000.
Why?
It makes the number seem like it's based on meticulous calculation, like you figured it down to the last dollar and simply can't move. It feels less arbitrary.
The Haiti kidnapping example used this, right? The final ransom.
Exactly. Extreme low anchor from the nephew, $3,000 against a $1 million demand, stalling, using their deadline, and then the final non-round number, $4,751 plus a stereo. It all came together.
And the Missouri rent negotiation is such a great everyday example.
Fantastic example. The tenant used labels, mirrors, the accusation audit. It seems like you think I don't care about costs.
Said no. Indirectly, multiple ways. How am I supposed to do that? Your offer is generous, but that just doesn't work for me.
Used a non-round number of $1,829 and ended up with a deal lower than the landlord's already reduced offer. It shows how tactical empathy sets the stage for effective bargaining.
And the book briefly mentions knowing different negotiating styles, too. Accommodator, assertive, analyst.
Yeah, just being aware that people have different default modes helps you adapt your interaction style. But the core techniques work across the board.
But underpinning all the bargaining tactics is that mindset. Ready to walk.
Absolutely non-negotiable, ironically. The book hammers this home. No deal is better than a bad deal. If you can't genuinely say no and walk away, you've lost your power. You've taken yourself hostage.
That's a strong way to put it.
And even when bargaining hard, remember, the person isn't the enemy. The unsolved issue is the enemy. Keep it collaborative, focused on the problem.
Okay, one last major concept. Finding black swans.
Ah, yes, the unknown unknowns.
So these aren't just things you know you don't know, like who have the wild card.
No, these are pieces of information you didn't even know existed. But if you uncover them, they can completely change the game. They have disproportionate impact.
Like the Griffin Bank crisis example.
Yeah.
The hostage taker's real motive wasn't money.
Exactly. The black swan was that he wanted suicide by cop. It was hinted at in a rambling note nobody fully processed, and an earlier crime they hadn't connected. Missing that black swan had tragic consequences.
And these black swans act as leverage multipliers. The book mentions 3 types of leverage.
Yep. Positive leverage.
Yeah.
You have something they want. Negative leverage. You can inflict pain or loss. The book cautions using this sparingly. It can backfire badly.
Right.
And normative leverage. Using their own standards, consistency, or worldview, their religion, to frame your requests.
Knowing their religion, that means understanding what rules or authorities they respect.
Exactly. What do they defer to? The market, experts, a specific ideology, God, social norms. You often have to look beyond the negotiation table into their broader life and beliefs.
Like the Watson National Mall protester. His religion involved God's instructions.
Right, so referencing the dawn of the third day tapped into that specific belief system and helped achieve a peaceful surrender. It leveraged his norms.
And tapping into their hopes and dreams, unattained goals.
Yeah, understanding what really drives them on a deeper level, their aspirations, can be incredibly powerful for getting them to follow your lead.
The book also says, if someone seems crazy,
It usually just means you're missing information. There's likely a black swan you haven't found yet, like the employee who seemed irrational until the audit info came out, or the Coca-Cola contact who seemed difficult but was actually constrained internally.
And finding these often requires face-to-face interaction.
Hugely important. Email and text lack tone, body language, those subtle cues that might reveal a hidden dynamic or piece of information. That Coke example, again, it took a dinner meeting for the guy to admit his constraints.
The Charleston real estate story also showed this labeling and probing.
Uncovered black swans like historic preservation rules, blocking competition, and high construction costs, revealing the building's true, unique value despite the high asking price. Finding those unknowns justified the deal.
Okay, so putting it all together requires preparation. Seems obvious, but the book has a specific take.
Very specific. The key quote is, "You don't rise to the occasion under pressure, you fall to your highest level of preparation."
Love that.
And it actually warns against focusing only on your BTNA, your walkaway point.
Really? Why? Isn't BTNA crucial?
It is, but the book argues that if it's your primary focus, you might gravitate towards it too easily. It becomes your psychological anchor, and you might aim too low, achieve a wimp win.
Settling for just better than your worst case instead of aiming higher.
Exactly. So instead, the book says, set an optimistic but reasonable goal. Define it clearly.
Write it down.
Write it down. Discuss it with someone, makes it harder to back down later. Carry that written goal into the negotiation itself.
And prepare that negotiation one-sheet the book mentions in the appendix.
Yeah, anticipating labels, drafting calibrated questions, setting your bargaining range, target, first offer, thinking about hidden players, deal killers, loss aversion angles. It's about preparing to be flexible and responsive, not creating a rigid script.
Wow. That really was a deep dive into this book's approach. It's so clear that becoming a skilled negotiator isn't about being some ruthless debater.
Not at all. It's about mastering emotional intelligence, truly listening, understanding the psychology of theirs and yours.
It really reframes negotiation. It's less about conflict, more about discovery.
Exactly. Trading that fear of conflict for a sense of curiosity.
The book puts it beautifully, doesn't it? Every conversation, every moment is a series of small conflicts that, if you manage them well, can lead to something creative and positive.
A powerful idea.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. How might your own relationships, personal and professional, change if you stop dodging those uncomfortable conversations? What if you started seeing them as chances for real discovery and connection, using some of the skills we've talked about from this book?